Here's something that should terrify every American manufacturer right now. Donald Trump just went to Canada asking for $650 billion in shipping help. Not a partnership, not a deal, help. Because America's Great Lakes shipping system has collapsed so badly that we literally can't move our own cargo anymore. And Mark Carney's response? It didn't just say no, it exposed how badly we've screwed up our own infrastructure. And it signaled the start of a new reality where Canada controls Great Lakes shipping. And we're just stuck watching. Right now, shipping companies across America are panicking. And it's not just about higher costs or slower deliveries, though those are about to get way worse. It's about the fact that the United States of America, the biggest economy on the planet, has let its shipping infrastructure rot so completely that we need Canada to bail us out just to move basic freight. And Canada just showed us they can use that dependency like a weapon. For years, we've operated under this assumption that our transportation problems were our problems to solve, that international partnerships were nice bonuses, not lifelines. What's happening today flips that entire idea on its head. Canadian shipping isn't a convenience anymore, it's become essential, and we just lost access to it because of our own incompetence. This Great Lakes crisis isn't just about old locks or outdated ports, even though both of those are disasters waiting to happen. This is about America waking up to the fact that inland shipping isn't just a domestic issue we can ignore anymore. We are dependent on international cooperation, and Trump's desperate plea for Canadian help proves we've already lost control. Let me break down what actually went down here, because the headlines completely miss how deep this problem goes. Once you understand why Trump was literally begging for over $500 billion in access to Canada's system, and why Carney's answer was so brutal, you'll realize this is a crisis American institutions have no idea how to fix. So here's the official story, which sounds almost reasonable until you look closer. American Great Lakes shipping is falling apart. Costs are skyrocketing. Manufacturers can't move products efficiently anymore. So Trump proposed what his administration called a continental shipping partnership with Canada. The framework was pretty straightforward. American shipping companies would get subsidized access to Canada's infrastructure, their ports, their management systems, all at prices way below what our own broken system charges. The whole package was worth about $650 billion over 15 years. Basically, we were asking Canada to put our failing shipping system on life support. From Trump's angle, this was smart American problem solving. Work with our neighbors, get what we need. The reasoning went like this. Canada benefits from our economic relationship. So if we apply the right pressure, they'll give us the shipping access we desperately need at prices we can actually handle. But here's the flaw in that thinking. It assumes Canada's shipping infrastructure exists to solve our problems instead of serving their own economic and sovereignty interests. It assumes their waterway resources are just sitting there for us to use, regardless of what Canada's priorities are. And worst of all, it assumes Canada has some obligation to subsidize our failures by giving us cheap access to infrastructure they've actually maintained while ours fell apart. When Carney got asked about Trump's bailout request at a transportation conference in Thunder Bay, his response went absolutely viral within hours. He didn't negotiate, he didn't suggest alternatives, he didn't engage with the details of what we were asking for. Instead, he announced that Canada was putting comprehensive sovereignty protections in place for the Great Lakes. They'd prioritize Canadian shipping efficiency, environmental protection, and long-term partners who actually contribute to sustainable development, not countries looking for emergency bailouts because they neglected their own infrastructure. Then came the moment that absolutely blew up the internet and sent American shipping executives into full panic mode. Someone asked if Canada might provide emergency access if American needs got truly desperate. Carney's response was devastating. The Great Lakes belong to the communities and ecosystems that depend on them, not to countries that treat continental waterways as emergency backup for shipping systems they fail to maintain. That phrase, shipping systems they fail to maintain, has been viewed over 95 million times in the last 12 hours. It's been translated into dozens of languages. Transportation experts worldwide are analyzing it. Every serious maritime economy is studying what this means for America's credibility in infrastructure. But this wasn't just about policy. It was about the strategic confidence that makes this kind of rejection possible. You don't turn down $650 billion in potential revenue unless you've already got $650 billion worth of better options lined up and shipping capabilities that matter more than short-term economic pressure. And Canada's been building those alternatives for years while we weren't paying attention. Canadian Great Lakes modernization, backed by government investment and environmental principles, has created transportation capacity that American freight companies actually find more efficient and reliable than anything available through our aging, deteriorating infrastructure. Canadian port technology, developed with international shipping partners, offers cargo handling that American manufacturers prefer over our own systems, which are constrained by infrastructure limits and regulatory chaos. Canadian shipping route optimization, coordinated with European and Asian partners, has built international relationships that give them supply chain alternatives to our unreliable systems. In other words, while American policy focused on managing crises instead of preventing them, Canada was building comprehensive infrastructure based on environmental responsibility, innovation, and sustainable management. When their system matured, our dependency became strategically worthless to them. The immediate impact on American shipping has been catastrophic, and most Americans don't even understand it yet. Bulk cargo that manufacturers depend on suddenly faces capacity limits and price hikes that threaten entire industries that assumed affordable Great Lakes shipping would always be there. American iron ore, grain, and coal shippers that have been struggling discovered that the Canadian alternatives they'd been secretly using aren't available for expansion anymore. Steel production, agricultural exports, energy transportation, all hitting bottlenecks that Canadian systems had been quietly solving. Supply chains built around Canadian efficiency are now contracting as Canada redirects resources toward partnerships that actually benefit them long term instead of just bailing out our incompetence. But the real crisis isn't operational, it's institutional. Trump's bailout request reveals how dependent American shipping has become on Canada subsidizing our failures through cheap access to services that were never guaranteed to last forever. The sophistication it took to pull off this shipping sovereignty move shows something American planners have consistently underestimated about Canadian capacity. This wasn't a reaction to Trump's demands. This was a proactive strategy designed to protect Canadian investment while exposing how inadequate American crisis management really is. American intelligence that failed to predict this realignment now faces serious questions about their ability to assess vulnerabilities created by our own infrastructure dysfunction. When your analytical tools can't anticipate policy changes that affect America's entire inland freight strategy, how can anyone trust your assessments of actual security threats? The constitutional angle reflects the same inadequacy that's characterized American responses throughout this whole crisis. When vital American freight requires services from foreign systems with their own democratic legitimacy and priorities, our constitutional framework hits problems it wasn't built to handle. This transportation crisis can only be fixed through international cooperation with partners who don't consider our dysfunction their responsibility anymore. When those partners have developed better alternatives to working with us, constitutional tools designed for domestic challenges become useless for international problems. Carney's strategic brilliance becomes clear when you see this as part of a comprehensive realignment designed to demonstrate Canadian waterway sovereignty while maintaining access to global development through partnerships that actually contribute to Canadian capacity. The Great Lakes rejection didn't just refuse our request, it redefined the entire framework for continental cooperation. Instead of treating Canadian infrastructure as our backup plan, Carney positioned their waterway resources as superior systems that serve Canadian priorities and environmental protection. The demonstration effect goes way beyond North America. When a middle power can successfully expose shipping vulnerabilities in the world's largest economy through waterway sovereignty, every other shipping-capable country starts reconsidering their relationship with American cooperation requests. European shipping companies have quietly started exploring frameworks with countries that demonstrate sustainable investment. Asian firms have accelerated partnerships that don't require managing American failures. International shipping organizations have begun prioritizing partnerships with countries that invest in modernization instead of seeking bailouts for systems they've let deteriorate. This isn't anti-American policy. This is rational planning by countries that can't assume American demands will stay economically responsible across election cycles. When your most reliable partner demonstrates that alternatives to managing your crises are actually better, everyone else starts wondering what they could do instead. The domestic political fallout is particularly brutal because the communities most affected by losing Great Lakes access were the strongest supporters of infrastructure policies promising to solve transportation problems through private sector efficiency instead of public investment. Manufacturing communities that depended on Canadian efficiency for reliable supply chains are learning that political promises about American greatness don't translate into functional freight when foreign alternatives disappear. Port cities that relied on Canadian systems now face transportation costs that might force them to abandon industries that can't survive without reliable shipping access. From a policy standpoint, what's most disturbing about this crisis isn't the immediate disruption, though that disruption will reshape American economic geography for decades. It's what this moment reveals about American institutional capacity to understand and respond to challenges that require long-term investment instead of emergency management. When your approach to every shipping challenge is demanding that international partners absorb the costs of American failures, you're not building partnerships. You're advertising dependency while pretending to show leadership. The technology and environmental dimension adds another strategic layer that American policy completely missed. Canadian Great Lakes management doesn't just serve our emergency needs, it demonstrates advanced capabilities under environmental agreements that increasingly exclude American participation when our demands become extractive instead of collaborative. Canadian investment in shipping technology, environmental protection, and sustainable management creates competitive advantages that translate directly into transportation partnerships. American systems, constrained by deterioration and regulatory restrictions on innovation, fell behind in partnerships that matter to modern freight development. Looking ahead, the most concerning part of this crisis isn't the immediate disruption, though that will permanently reshape American freight competitiveness. It's what this reveals about American institutional inability to adapt to relationships that require investment instead of crisis management. When competitiveness depends on voluntary cooperation from partners who've developed alternatives to accommodating American crises, policy tools designed for managing emergencies become counterproductive. The more bailout requests we make, the more attractive those alternatives become. Canada's strategy demonstrates exactly this dynamic. Every American bailout request gave Canadian officials more justification to accelerate sustainable development. Every assumption of permanent Canadian accommodation created incentives for Canadian independence. The viral explosion across social media tonight isn't just about shipping finance or transportation policy. It's about the recognition that shipping sovereignty has permanently shifted away from countries that treat transportation as crisis management toward countries that treat shipping as institutional competence. The path back to competitive American shipping won't come through louder demands for Canadian bailouts or more creative threats against Canadian sovereignty. It'll come through rebuilding the institutional competence that makes American partnership attractive instead of extractive. That means transportation investment providing universal freight access instead of emergency rationing. It means infrastructure policy that addresses shipping capacity directly instead of outsourcing responsibility to foreign systems. Whether American political institutions can sustain that kind of fundamental reform remains to be seen. But until they can, expect more moments like this where American assumptions about shipping access meet Canadian realities about sustainability, and America discovers that freight demand isn't an effective substitute for competent policy. The choice facing American planners isn't whether to compete with Canadian partnerships. Those partnerships are already operational and already serving markets American systems can't access on sustainable terms. The choice is whether to rebuild American relationships based on mutual benefit or accept permanent disadvantage in transportation access. History suggests shipping powers rarely recover waterway advantages once they've lost them through infrastructure negligence instead of technological competition. The fact that Canada managed this transition while maintaining environmental protection makes the American failure even more remarkable. Trump's plea for a Canadian Great Lakes bailout wasn't just a shipping proposal. It was an admission that American freight mobility now depends on Canadian generosity instead of American capability. Carney's brutal reply wasn't just a rejection. It was a declaration that shipping sovereignty matters more than convenience. When countries choose between infrastructure investment and crisis management, the internet exploded because people recognized that transportation sovereignty had just become another domain where American functionality depends on foreign accommodation instead of domestic capacity. Canada's brutal reply didn't just protect Great Lakes resources, it announced that the era of treating shipping infrastructure as American backup systems is over, and the era of transportation sovereignty has begun. So what do you think about this massive shift in Great Lakes shipping power? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.